Everybody, I'm Karen Garrison. I'm an alcoholic, and it's truly through the grace of God and the power of Alcoholics Anonymous that I've been sober since May 30th, 1982, and that does not make me a miracle. Alcoholics Anonymous is a miracle. If you're new here tonight, I want to welcome you to AA. I always call it God's magnificent AA, the from that saved my life, and it's going to save yours too, if you want to take a few quick actions. And I suggest trying to get a sponsor, that you get our book, Alcoholics Anonymous, and you get busy. Everybody else is doing around here. And to stay sober, I stay sober for 29 years, and people like me cannot stay sober, I can guarantee it. God, it is hotter than the blue blazes of hell out there. Now, I live in West LA, and it gets hot, but not like this. My God. I keep waiting for the devil to appear any minute here. My home group is the Pacific Group in West LA, and I'm very, very proud to be with the Pacific Group. And, you know, I'm my sponsor, Clancy, since she's 11 biggest wishes. And anybody in this room is wondering why the man for a sponsor, why I have Clancy for a sponsor. It's really quite simple. I did not get sober in California. I got sober in a place called Lincoln, Nebraska. Was not doing well at Alcoholics Anonymous, Nebraska. I went through 19 sponsors at a rapid clip, and I'm certainly not proud as I stand here tonight. And thank God for the old timers that somebody loved me enough to get my current sponsor. I tell you that my life has done nothing but totally completely transformed. And I have to adore the ground that man walks on. I talked to him this morning, I do almost every single day of my life, and he said, well, get up and share your experience, your strength, and your hope, and tell those people what it was like, what happened, what it's like now. Ignore the old timers. They got the your inspiration, my dear. And talk directly to those new people in life and motivate it. And I do as a stand here, and I welcome you, and I hope that you stay. And then I think I do with that. That's the most important thing I can ever do. And that's to say, God, please help me say what you want me to say to these people. God's very much a part of my life now, you guys. You stay there, I guarantee you. I come from an alcoholic's hell. I think I can describe it was so bad. You know, my life is real good, and sometimes I forget how bad it was. And I can tell you the day I got sober, I weighed 95 pounds. I was the color of squash. I had alcoholic hepatitis. I had liver cirrhosis. I had ruptured esophageal varices. And you know what that stuff is. You don't want to know this because you die from that kind of stuff. And I was standing on Skid Row in Lincoln, Nebraska, sucking on a bottle of Mad Dog. And if you guys haven't drank Mad Dog, I need to tell you, it's not one of your finer wines, I can assure you. I'll guarantee you one thing, that crack has never seen a grave, mate, no mistake about that. And I literally cannot believe this going on in my life. I lost my children. I lost my husband twice. I lost my car, my house. It was over. I was dying. I lost the one thing brought my knees and disease. I lost my nursing license. And you guys, I love my profession. That's like devastating. That stopped me from drinking. And there's a reason for that. And it's in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I have an obsession that somehow, someday, I'm control and enjoy my drinking. The illusion of astonishing book talks about real specific gates of insanity and doubt. And I'll guarantee you one thing, I was in the gates of pure insanity. I got sober almost into my coffin. And I am so good for those problems. I stand here now, I cannot begin to tell you. Yeah, it does start my life with me standing on Skid Row, I got to tell you guys. I'm from a wonderful home there in Nebraska, and I want you to know that. My mother wanted you to know it too, I'll guarantee you that. You know, my mom died 15 years ago, and God, I still miss her so much today, I can't begin to tell you. Boy, folks, you only get one, and when they're gone, they're gone. I made a military many, many years ago. We had a great relationship. That's his wife and stuff, but I just miss her terribly. You know, my dad died from alcoholism on the streets of Chicago in 1979. And you tell me how a major in the Air Force dies on Skid Row. I don't know how that happened. I just thought he was an alcoholic. And whether he found A or not, I do not know. I just know he's certainly not stayed sober as well. So one more time from that, this is a cunning, baffling, powerful disease that kills people. This is not a game I'm playing. This is serious business. I would get in the room if my father were alive tonight, because we would have a lot to talk about, I can tell you. I have a sister who was Miss Rah-Rah in high school and homecoming queen. She treated all that kind of crap and made straight A's, never cracked a book, and I made straight F's, never cracked a book, and that was the difference. My sister was a beautiful little girl. She's a gorgeous woman today. She looks nothing like I do, I gotta tell you. She was a model for many years for Neiman Marcus in Dallas, and now she's retired and teaches school in the West Indies. And I gotta tell you guys, the direct result of this program, I love her very much tonight. And I have a brother who's a fighter pilot in the Navy, and my brother retired about 10 years ago doing 9/11 in Iraq, and so he's been called back in service. And, you know, my brother is really old to be a fighter pilot. You guys, he's 58 years old. We were growing up, I thought he was such a dork, I can't begin to tell you. Spray doesn't arrow Mike, doesn't drink, doesn't use drugs, doesn't screw around. He doesn't embarrass you about the truth, but so I'm so proud of that man, I cannot begin to tell you. You ain't catch me over Iraq in any fighter fine, but neither one of these people are alcoholic. And I have another sister who's married to a public defender in Lincoln, Nebraska, who got me out of a whole bunch of trouble when I got sober. And I welcome their homes than I ever used to be. I come from basically a very boring family. They're high social people, and they bore me to tears. I love it. They bore me to tears. And I have a couple of kids who are 49 and 50 years old. I know I certainly don't look old enough to have kids that age, but by God, I sure do. And this is where it really starts getting interesting for me. These kids are anything but boring, I got to tell you guys. As a matter of fact, there are a couple of jerks, you know the truth, but those couple of jerks give me five of the most gorgeous grandbabies you've ever seen before in your life. And those grandbabies have never seen their grandmother drink, and I hope to God they never do. So things in my family are very good tonight. It's only a direct result of Alcoholics Anonymous, I can assure you. It took a long time for it to happen. In my case, that's a good thing. But, you know, I was a disruptive jerk when I was growing up, always in trouble in classrooms. I hated discipline. I was very, very rebellious. I hate people telling me what to do. And I like it even less today, if you know the truth. And, I never felt like I belonged anywhere. And I did it a lot from the 8 and right on that 125%, I got to tell you. I really don't remember my first drink, you guys. But I can tell you that I hope to God I never forget my last one. And I hope it was my last one. What alcohol did from the very beginning. I could maybe feel I could be anything I wanted to be. I could do anything I wanted to do. I drank any given opportunity after that. And I was probably about 13 years old. I realized I'm an alcoholic Samestein. And I don't have this fun about talking about alcoholism up here. I used a lot of drugs too. It's a small part of my story. My sponsor encourages me to do that. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and Bill Wilson's story and Bob Smith, those are co-founders, they talk about, and the powerful influence of alcohol and sedation. They both found upon the rock. So that's precisely what happened to me. But, I'm one of these alcoholics emails, and I hate to say this from a podium, but it's precisely the way it was for me. We're supposed to tell the truth up here. If you pat me on the head, my pants what happens to me. And I got myself into a lot of trouble when I was growing up. I absolutely love men. I love everything about them. You name it, I love it. And then the downfall of my entire existence, and it remained the same today, I'm sorry to say. And I particularly like sick men. There's a room full of them here tonight. I can just feel it, That's one thing girls I live about Southern California. It's just many sick men are just entertained around the clock 24 hours a day. I got pregnant when I was 16 years old and I had to get married. In my day, girls, you had to get married. There's no ifs, ands, and buts of that. That's just what we did in 7. As it must be, I married an alcoholic. He was 17, I was 16. I couldn't cook, I couldn't clean, I couldn't take care of a baby. Nor did I want to take care of a baby. And before we knew, we had 2 babies to take care of. I quickly found out what caused all that, and I put a halt to it, I'll guarantee you that. And that caused a lot of trouble throughout the years. And as it must be, I married an individual that refused to work, that drank on a daily basis, come home and beat me up on a daily basis. And I had never seen a man hit a woman before in my life, you guys. I'll tell you one thing. If my dad would laid one hand on my mom, she'd have knocked her from here to the moon, I gotta tell you. And I heard to hate this guy very, very much. And I'm not blaming her for my disease, so please don't get me wrong. It's just part of my story. I need to share it. And some of that family had to get a job. And I found a job as a nurse's aide at the hospital there in Lincoln. And the magic was put in my life. I literally fell in love with nursing. And I made a plan in myself. I would love to go to school. I'd love to become a registered nurse. That's what I'd love to do. They say that alcoholics don't have willpower. And I'm here to tell you from this point that is a bunch of crap. I have more willpower than 20 elephants. When I want to do well, I'm going to do well. I'll ounce of willpower because of my disease. By God, when I want to do something, I'm going to do it. I went back. I went to school full time. I worked full time. And I'm talking about 18, 20 hours a day, you guys, and that is hard stuff to do. When I was 27 years old, I became a registered nurse. And I went to work in surgery at a hospital there in Lincoln. I had that job for 19 years. And I loved it in the operating room. I loved taking care of those patients. It's a colorful, exciting nursing position. I drank. Medical people mostly. They were color intense people, and they worked hard and they played hard. And I need to tell you guys that the incidence of alcoholism amongst my profession is tremendously high. That job, if you're going to have surgery next week, that has to be very, very true. And those people are so grateful that I'm sober that they can't see straight. And I'm talking about alcoholics is what I'm talking about. In our book, Alcoholics Anonymous says clearly that we're telling the general idea of our drinking was like. I think it's the general idea of my drinking was like. I can tell you guys about my drinking about 5 seconds left, the truth. Many, many years ago, I was at a concert in upstate New York called Woodstock. I'm talking about a piece of crap they had 10 years ago. I'm talking about the real Woodstock. There will never be another one, trust me on that. The Kiss My 60s threw a party that nobody will ever match, I'm quite sure. You cannot duplicate Woodstock, please. Now, they'll never have another one. But anyway, I really don't remember. I was part of the medical staff. We should have all lost our licenses that whole weekend. They were all so bad. But, I'll never forget it was like standing for the stage out there. Richie Haven and St. Freedom and Joe Cocker and Country Joe. Sound the scripts I love. I come from the roaring 60s, you guys, and I love rock and roll. Things that I changed in my life a little tiny bit. I loved Elvis Presley, and Janis Joplin was my lady, let me tell you. When Janis Joplin, if I remember Alcoholics Anonymous, you guys, I'd have hung out with Janis, let me tell you. I traded Janis for Clancy and David Hill, but please don't tell him I said that. I was just kidding. I wouldn't trade my sponsor for 20 Janis Joplins, but, drinking for me at one time was a fun thing, you guys. But it turned to a nightmare that I hope I can explain here tonight. It was just absolutely horrible stuff. Anyway, we got back from Woodstock, and we got our drugs from New York Hospital. And they said, keep close track of these drugs, and you have to explain to every single one of them what happened to them and stuff. We got to New York Hospital, we didn't have one drug left. Why? Because most of us took them all. But anyway, we did give some to some patients, but not very many. But, we took care of over 3,000 or 4,000 people that week, and with 86 overdoses, 2 people died, 6 babies were born, and we were busy, let me tell you. But you were busy. We were busy drinking and using drugs, what we were doing. But that was a great weekend. I'll never forget as long as I live. And, when they made the newest Woodstock about 10 years ago, they invited the whole medical staff to come back. And my sponsor told me, he says, when are you going to grow up? When are you ever going to grow up? And I thought, never. Never. I'll always love rock and roll and stuff. But anyway, I went to work at this hospital, and I was very successful in that operating room. I was the star in that operating room. The surgeons loved me. All the staff loved me. I got along well with other people and stuff. And I really did well. I excelled in that area, if you will, and stuff. But anyway, you know, the day came, my kids were getting in trouble, and I'd gone through, like, been engaged like 8 times. And I thought, I need to get married to my ex-husband again. That's what I need to do. But you see their father, besides that, even with him for all the things that he's done to me. And those were not very good reasons to get married again, I gotta tell you. But, if anybody in this room is thinking about getting married to the same person twice, don't do it. You're going to be sorry. The only way I can describe it's like taking a bite out of the same turd twice, if you will. I'm sorry to Betsy or I feel. And he feels the same way I do, as a matter of fact. But I danced that man through the most miserable years of his life on the face of this earth. And I love to tell you guys the story. I tell you, my sponsor always tells me that is not funny, and you should not be telling that from AA puns. I said, okay, fine, then I won't tell you. He said, no, go ahead and tell people see how sick you really were, and apparently how sick you really still are. I'm still sick, and I still think it's funny, and I'm telling the story. When I married him again, I told him, I said, if you ever hit me again, buddy, I will kill you next time you hit me. And he said, I'll never hit you, ever. And I said, you better see that you don't. He lied his way. He came home drunk one night, and I happened to be sober this night for some reason. I'll never know why, because I usually wasn't. And girls, you know what guys do when they come home drunk? They want to take you to bed and stuff, and I was not buying it. If there's anything I can't stand, it's some drunk man mauling me when I'm sober. I will say with shoes on the foot, though, it's fine with me. And that guy came and indicated that to me. I said, you get your hands off me and leave me alone. I want nothing to do with him, period. And he broke my arm is what he did. And I'm here to tell you guys that I was pissed. As a matter of fact, I'm still pissed about it, to know the truth. And I told him, I said, you go to sleep on that couch, and so help me God, when you wake up, you're going to wish you'd never been born. And he sat for hours, you guys, the eyes fried open. As it must be, he finally passed down. And I started drinking martinis. This is a classic example of what alcohol did for me. Alcohol told me what to do. I didn't tell it what to do. I had about 8, 10 martinis, and I was feeling no pain, I can assure you. And I was sitting there watching this guy. And I should tell you what this man was doing. I can't tell you something what he was doing. He was laying on the couch playing with himself. I thought, you disgusting man, you make me sick to my stomach. And the more I drank, the madder I got. You guys, I'm a nurse, and I'm very familiar with male anatomy. And I'd be very familiar with male anatomy if I wasn't a nurse. But anyway, I thought to myself, what can I do to even this guy for all the things he's done to me? I got this brilliant idea in my drunken stupor. So that's one thing we should never do, folks, is drink and think at the same time. And this was many, many years ago, you guys, when super glue first came out. And super glue is powerful stuff. And, it's an amazing thing. I get the honor of speaking all over the world, not like some of us, and I've spoken to a lot of people in a lot of different places and told this story and stuff. The guy that made super glue died about 2 months ago, and I got all these emails from people from all over the world. I thought, oh, stop, But anyway, I got that glue, and I read the directions on that glue, and like I said, I was drunk and I wasn't seeing very clearly. And what I thought those directions said were, if this is human skin, it'd be off within 15 hours. Now, why would I say something stupid like that? What it said was, in fact, if this is human skin, it'd be off within 5 minutes is what it said. And this guy, I get so excited when I tell this story, I could just do it all over again. This guy, and I poured super glue all over this guy's groin, and I mean everywhere. So I'm placing the man have super glue, and I laughed about it, and I went to bed. And I woke up in the morning to screams of horror like you could not even believe. I didn't mean to hurt this guy's bed. I swear to God that's true. But I'll tell you what happened to my ex-husband. This guy never had the advantage of being circumcised when he was born, and now he clearly was, I can assure you. Well, he broke my arm, and we had a telephone by our bed in Lincoln. He called the police, the cops were out from our home with their sirens going. There was an ambulance out there. The neighbors were balking out their windows. And, one thing you guys got to keep in mind here, they don't see things like this happen in Lincoln, Nebraska. In California, it would not surprise me one bit, but it's certainly not there. And the cops were laughing. The whole thing was funny. And they said, lady, are you crazy or what? Why would you do something? I said, what makes you think that I did anyway? I was only standing with glue all over my hands. And when they said, you're under arrest for assault and battery. I said, you cannot arrest wives in Nebraska for assault and battery against their husbands. I knew better than that. And 2 days later when I got out of jail, I guess I didn't know better than that. And they took that man to the very hospital I worked at in surgery, and he had to have surgery. One time the whole staff saw what Karen did. They took me to jail on it turned out to be a terrible thing. Those doctors there in Lincoln couldn't get that glue off it. They get you surgeons down from Creighton University School in Omaha, Nebraska, get that glue off it. There's a paper about that at Creighton. If it's going to be the medical thing, you can read about it if you want to. I know there's a paper about it, not like this, I'm going to tell you. And I was sitting in that jail thinking to myself, I am getting the hell out of this marriage. When this guy comes home from the hospital, he's going to glue something to mine shut, and he would have, too. I got to check it. That happened to a lady in Kentucky about 6 years ago, and believe me, I don't want it to happen to me. So, anyway, I divorced him one more time, and I got almost disarmed for my life. This guy told me he was in the mafia. Now, I don't think anybody in Nebraska's in the mafia, for God's sake. I was lying to him, he was lying to me. Took off nightmares, what it was. I was drinking on a daily basis. I was taking Valium for severe tremors I was starting to have. It didn't be no more fun, I got to tell you guys. You know, I'm a nurse and I've studied alcoholism. I know about it before I became one. It shows me one more time tonight where our book says it's so true. Self-knowledge avails us nothing in this disease. It's action that counts. Nowhere in our book do we have a chapter called In the Thinking. We do have what's called In the Action. That's the only reason I'm standing here 29 years sober. And the day came to the hospital, told me, they said, Karen, come out to the front desk. We want to talk to you. You know, have a seat. You know how you know you're in trouble, folks, and you know it's coming? I knew it that day. And they said, you know, we were tired of you calling in sick. We were tired of reading about you in the paper. Drunk driving charges, bad checks, gluing husbands, all the crap that you're doing. They said, Sharon, you have a drinking problem. You're going to go to a treatment center, or you're not going to work in here. We can't rely on nurses staff in the paper anymore. And I stood there and I said, you and what army's going to make me go to a treatment center? And they said, Karen, listen to us. Don't make the mistake of walking out of here because you're not coming back. And I did it anyway. I just walked out. The dumbest thing I've ever done in my whole life. And anyway, the next 2 years I spent on the streets of Nebraska. You know, I went to work at another hospital in Lincoln. I went to work at Bryan Memorial Hospital. And I got caught stealing morphine from that hospital. And I lost my nursing license as a result of that and stuff. Went up on the streets of Nebraska. I spent 2 vicious years on the streets, you guys. Traveling to the Midwest, prostituting myself, doing the stuff that we do. You know, if you're new here tonight and you haven't done any street time, it is ugly out there, folks. Let me tell you, it is not fun to be out there, especially a woman on the streets by herself. I have a big mouth. I get myself into a lot of trouble and stuff, but I'm lucky I survived that. After years, I found myself back in Lincoln, Nebraska, standing on Skid Row, sucking on a bottle of Mad Dog. And I thought, what in the hell am I doing this for? Well, I had to do something to start the shakes. I had to drink. And I didn't want anything I did to get the alcohol and drugs and stuff. But anyway, I was so sick, I passed down the streets and woke up in intensive care ward, the very hospital I was born at, the very hospital that I worked at for 19 years. And I will tell you guys clearly that the alcoholic hell for me started the day I got sober. You know, I'm not a very good person. I weighed 95 pounds when I got sober. And I was coming off a quart or whatever a day and 200 milligrams of Valium a day. There's a lot of booze, that's a lot of pills, and I had a lot of diets, let me tell you. You know, they say that most alcohol withdrawal is over in 3 days, and perhaps it is for some people. It certainly was not for me. It took me a long time before I started feeling better. I lived in that intensive care ward. I had tubes coming out of my belly. They were draining fluid off my liver. I had IVs going, and I found myself in withdrawal that was bad. I can't begin to tell you guys. And I was in that intensive care ward, and I shook, and I shook, and I died for 30 solid days. I turned to the nurses, and man, they gave me drugs for this withdrawal. They said, we're not giving you any drugs. Fill it, and maybe you'll never do it again. No drugs. Quit asking for them. And, but let me tell you what these people did for me, and I will be forever grateful as long as I'm sober and Alcoholics Anonymous. They got 10 members of AA to come and sit with me. And these people never left me day or night for 30 solid days. I really fell in love with these people, and I'll tell you why. There was nobody in my life speaking to me. Family, friends, nobody. I was all by myself, and I was so lonely, I can't begin to tell you. So the first time in a long time, people were talking to me. They said, Karen, just keep breathing. All you do is breathe. And I say, when is this withdrawal going to stop? And they said, when it's time, that's when it's going to stop. They were absolutely accurate about that. When it's time, it's time. At 30 days sober, I wasn't in that official treatment clinic hospital. I'm a project of a treatment center. I had no opinion one way or the other, but apparently I went to find me because all they talked about was Alcoholics Anonymous. And, you know, I'll never forget, be thankful for those nurses that call Alcoholics Anonymous and got those people over there and stuff. You know, sometimes people say, hey, Mike, don't hear it very often, but I've heard it before. We don't go unless the alcoholic calls us. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm standing here 29 years sober tonight. I never made any damn phone call. Where'd that crap come from? It's good enough for our co-founders, but I guess it's good enough for us. I think Bill found Bob, as the story goes. I think Bob found Bill. My responsibility statement does indeed say, when anyone ever reaches out for help with the head of AA, always to be there, that I'm responsible. The nurses reached out, the alcoholics responded. I agree, said, direct result, I'm standing here 29 years old, but they said, oh, Karen, you just keep breathing. You don't do anything else right now except breathe. We're going to read this book to you. And that's what they did to me for 30 solid days. I went to that treatment program at the hospital, and I'm sorry to say I was not the prized patient in that treatment center. I went through like 13 counselors in there and got kicked out of all the groups and stuff. And they said, you know, you're into denial. And I thought, into denial? You must be joking. Tubes come out of my belly. I'm into denial. But anyway, I knew I was an alcoholic 10 years before I quit drinking. I wasn't into any denial. But anyway, I guess, you know, they signed me long enough where I could eventually get some sobriety and stuff. But anyway, I found myself very, very ethnic Alcoholics Anonymous in Lincoln, Nebraska. I wasn't doing one thing to teach people in AA to do it. And I rapidly went through 19 sponsors in that town. You know, you can play your crap just for so long, and these old timers then start nailing you over after the other. God love them, the old timers, not Alcoholics Anonymous. They really saved my life, and but they are dying off right and left, I can tell you guys, and they have taught me well. And I'll be grateful forever. But this little guy with 29 years said, come outside, I want to talk to you. He said, you stay away from new people. How dare you tell the new people in AA or you book them in as a sponsor? He said, you're like a typhoid Mary in AA. Everybody dies trying to be able to stay sober somehow. He went on to tell me, there's going to be a man from California speaking in Kearney, Nebraska this weekend. His name is Clancy. This man's speaking, and this man, he will sponsor you. He is a master at dealing with jerks like you. And I know about Clancy, and I want nothing to do with him, period, because I knew I was going to be in bad, bad trouble. And I got to tell you guys that my fears have been justified 8,000 times over. But I told this ultra, I said, who the hell do you think you're going to tell me you need my sponsor now for Anonymous? He said, if you don't get in that car and go this Saturday, I'm going to tell everybody in Lincoln out you stole money from an AA meeting. And I'll guarantee I was in that car going to Kearney, Nebraska, And I paid that money back too, by the way. I did pay it back. And I would tell you guys, from a podium in Kearney, Nebraska, Clancy literally did the magic of Alcoholics Anonymous in my life. My life's never been the same since that talk. And there's a reason for that. For the first time in my sobriety, I was identifying another alcoholic. And as I understand Alcoholics Anonymous, that's what this thing is all about. I know of no finer speaker in the world than my sponsor. I'm not saying you need to believe that. It's only important that I believe that. In that talk, I wanted that man for my sponsor. That, ladies and gentlemen, how God works in my life. He does to me what I can't do for myself, apparently. I must have walked out of that convention where I asked him to be my sponsor. And he looked at me and he said, I don't sponsor crazy people like you. And that's a lie anyway. He sponsors people crazy I ever thought of being. And I thought to myself, what he said to me before he doesn't even know me, I wasn't aware of that. The old timer, he called him 2 weeks prior to me coming to Nebraska. And after they brought me, if he would talk, he said, of course I want. He knew my game. He said, can't I just sponsor people in long distance spaces, but I'm going to do this for you. If I don't do it for you, I'll probably go die somewhere. So I'm going to tell you something, little girl. You better listen to me real good because I'm going to say it one time and one time only. You're going to call me, I'll tell you not to call me every day. You're going to read that book and you're going to sponsor people, become an active vomit off like Alcoholics. You're going to argue with me, defend your actions to me. You're going to do what I ask you to do. If you're going to do that, but get yourself a different sponsor. And you guys, you want to talk about we stood at the turning point. This is my recovery at the beginning of Alcoholics Anonymous. I said 2 words that I almost fell over when I said them. I said, yes, sir. He didn't tell me to say that. It just came out of my mouth. I don't tell people, yes, sir. Trust me, I don't. I went back to Lincoln. I became very, very affluent with my Thomas in Lincoln, and I wound up sponsoring a lot of women in that town and stuff. It wasn't long before Clancy told me, he said, I want you to get that nursing license back. I said, Clancy, I cannot go through. They're not going to even talk to me. It's a moral issue to him that you did what I was doing. They're done with you. They didn't want to see your face. He said, get the State Board of Nursing in Nebraska and tell those people you've been sober in AA for a year and a half that the opportunity to get your nursing license back. You guys, this is way before the days of medical diversion. They had no such thing in those days. And I said, they're not going to do it. And the phone went dead. He said, don't call me until you do it. Now I have to do it. So much to my sheer amazement, I went up there and they said, how many links are you willing to go to? And I had to do a lot, you guys. I had to take crap off people for 2 years that I wouldn't hard to mow my own lawn, I feel the truth. I had to keep my mouth shut in the process, too. One of the happiest days of my life occurred many, many years ago. And one more time, I was directed for the State Board of Nursing in Nebraska. And what they told me about my niece, the first time in Alcoholics Anonymous, they said, welcome home. You're fully reinstated as a registered nurse. And there's a gift from AA. I deserve it. By God, I intend to take it. I came out to California to visit a couple times. I fell in love with Southern California AA. And I made up my mind, I want to move out there. I called Clancy on the phone. I said, I quit my job. I'm on my way. And he said, unpack the car. Get your job back. Don't make big decisions without talking to me about it. You just need to think about this for a year. That's a big decision, Karen. Now let's do this right, okay? I thought, oh, that's it. I'm getting a different sponsor. This is just too much for me. But I obviously do not do that and stuff, thank God. But anyway, I went out there and I wanted to be a member of the Pacific Group. I wanted to work at UCLA and the operator room, be two of their trans fat teams, their heart number trans fat teams. I wanted this and I wanted that. And every single of those things have come true for me. And those are all gifts from AA. I was ready to say, no, by God, I'm taking all of it. People say to me all the time, why do you keep doing it? Oh, I want to tell you guys something real quick. Clancy told me early on, he says, are you praying? I said, no, I don't believe in God. He said, you pray anyway. You're on your knees in the morning, you're on your knees at night. You pray for God's will. I said, but I don't believe in God. He says, do you believe that I'm doing better than you are? I said, yeah. He said, you believe Alcoholics Anonymous is doing better? Yeah, I do that. Then pray to Alcoholics Anonymous. Pray whoever you want to. Just start praying. He said, because there's going to come a day in your sobriety when I can't help you, they can't help you, and you but better well have a God in your life to be deaf from the disease of alcoholism. I know that's very, very true. That's never happened too many times and stuff. But so I started praying. I did that for like 4 years. I Clancy long distance for 4 years rather than Lincoln. Every day I tried to I said, this is not working for me. I don't feel any connection with God. I feel like a dumbbell for doing it. He said, are you staying sober and daytime in Alcoholics Anonymous? I said, you know that. He said, that's the point of the whole thing. Are you stupid or what? I wasn't playing with a full deck when I arrived here. It took me a long time, these little simple things. In 1985, I found myself in Montreal, Canada at the World Conference of Alcoholics Anonymous. You guys haven't experienced a World Conference. I'll see you in Atlanta in about 4 years now, and we're going to have a great time and stuff. And it's something we should never miss these things. They're just fabulous and stuff. And anyway, I drove straight through from Lincoln, Nebraska with 5 girls. I sponsored 6 women in one car going straight through from Lincoln to Montreal, quack, quack, quack on the whole way. I'd never do it again in a million years, but when we had $100 a piece, we had no place to stay. We were going that World Conference to sleep outside. We were going. So got to Montreal. We've had an apartment rent the whole week for $100. I could not believe our good luck. And I found myself in a great big football stadium that Friday night meeting. And there was 65,000 sober alcoholics in that football stadium. And I was in awe of this program. And that's all of Alcoholics Anonymous. And began in the football field practice for flag ceremony. My sponsor's helping to direct that flag ceremony. We had to tell him hi, and there's people all over the world in Alcoholics Anonymous. And you guys, I'm from Nebraska, and I was impressed. Let me tell you, impressed and involved in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I let them join my friends in that flag ceremony started. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. When the United States of America's flag touched the turf of that stadium, I saw 65,000 sober people go absolutely crazy. Looked around myself, there was not one dry eye in that football stadium. All those old timers sitting around, all the people in between. And they all seemed to be loving this thing so very, very much. I remember thinking to myself, what is wrong with me? Why can't I feel what these people are feeling? I too want to love Alcoholics Anonymous. It cannot seem to cheat us enough. And for the first time in my life, I got cheers in my eyes, not trying to stop. And for the first time, with any amount of sincerity whatsoever, I said, God, thank you for getting me here. Please help me to stay here. Please help me love this problem as much as these people do. And I will tell you guys, in a foreign country, and I can't believe the power greater than myself, and watching me and people like Alcoholics, I really believe the old adage that we see when we see, we hear not before. I also believe the actions my sponsor gave me got me to that point. It's like, do it till you believe it, And anyway, I was so happy. I just cried and stuff. And I taught that God sincerely assessment. I believe what he's taught me. I get dare proof. That's all I get and stuff. But, you guys, for many, many years, I worked at e-selling the operating room, and I'm retired now. Stepping. I want to tell you what happened to me a couple of years ago. 2 years ago in August, it'll be 2 years this next one, I had a stroke. I had a stroke in my neck, not in my head, but in my neck. I was very, very lucky. It didn't kill me, but I had this blood clot the size of a walnut sitting on my carotid artery. And I was with a girl I sponsored on a Monday night. She said, Carol, what are you talking about? I was talking gibberish is what I was doing. It wasn't making any sense. And I didn't know I was doing it. She said, I'm going to call an ambulance. I said, you call an ambulance and I'll kill you is what I'll do. She called the ambulance anyway. Thank God she did it. Went over to UCLA, and I'm so very fortunate. I had the #1 stroke team in the world taking care of me and stuff. And they had this new drug, it's called TPA, and it's a big clot buster, and they have to be a candidate for this procedure and stuff. But apparently I was a candidate, so they took me to X-ray, and they put stents up my carotids and shot this TPA drug into that clot, and it absolved it and stuff. But anyway, I'm sorry to say that I was in there for 4 days and stuff, and I didn't die from that, but I got from the hospital. I had 2 pints of blood in my belly because I ripped the hell out of my stomach. Apparently I had either a stress ulcer from the stroke or an ulcer I wasn't aware of and stuff. But I'm back in the hospital from that, and of all things, I got well from that. Then, the more doctors you have, the more they're going to find wrong with these folks. And they told me last January, you have diabetes. I said, diabetes? What? I had diabetes in my family. They said, doesn't mean that you don't have it. They said, last year you wouldn't have had it, this year you do. The medical numbers have changed and stuff. And so it is type 2, and I can correct that with food and stuff. It's not really that big of a deal as I'm making it out to be. But anyway, I'm tired of being sick, I can tell you right this minute. But, people keep saying to me all the time, and the support I have from Alcoholics Anonymous is just unending, I got to tell you guys. And finally, the nurses had to tell these people, no more company in this hospital room. All of you leave right now. I said, how dare you take I said, I need those people. They said, no, all of you go home. And I was furious. I said, okay, then I'm going home. I packed my bag and I left. But, people say to me all the time, why do you keep doing it, Karen? Why do you keep doing it? And I know of no greater pain to say than where a 12th tradition says long form. So that this to the end, that my great blessings may never spawn me, I may forever live in thankful contemplation of him for his nice over salt. And there's more reasons than that for me. You're the ones that walking when nobody else would walk with me. You held my hand on the wrist for hold my hand. And you told me that you loved me. And I just imagine you in 1982. You taught me how to live. You taught me how to love. You taught me how to keep my pants up and all those things. And I'm doing those things very well. But I'll tell you the one thing that I do with 200% absolute perfection, that is this, that I love this more than anything in the whole world. It's truly a story from an alcoholic hell I cannot even describe. I have truly been given, just like a Bible Alcoholics Anonymous says, I have truly been given the keys to the kingdom. And I'm going to say one more thing, and I'm going to stop a little bit right now. You guys, it's not my best night, let me tell you, but I don't feel very good tonight. Anyway, I'm so glad. And thank you so much, Colleen, for inviting me. Sam, for at the airport. And I love these 2 days. I've known her for many, many years. I've been out here a number of times. I always enjoy coming over here. I'd like to come when it's cooler next time. But I love you all. Let's take this over. Thank you.